Welcome everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join today's discussion. Today we're launching the CXO Digital Leaders Dialogue series introducing the digital value journey. This is the first of 8 episodes, and today we're going to be talking about achieving more with less in the digital era as an introduction to this journey. We aim to finish in about 45 minutes. We're going to have about 30 to 35 minutes of discussion and then about 10 minutes for Q&A. If you have questions, please ask them in Zoom's Q&A chat during the discussions, and we'll cover as many as we can during that session. So, to the discussion. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Nina Drathalia and Ron Hooton. First of all, a little bit about Nina. She's had over 25 years experience in the ICT industry and held senior executive roles managing information, technology, and shared services operations. She's played a critical role in establishing and delivering against strategic roadmaps to transform the businesses and support their growth aspirations. Nina's got extensive experience across multiple industries, including healthcare, emergency services, utilities, and higher education. A serious traveller, she is feeling grounded in all the wrong ways at the moment. So welcome, Nina. How are you?
Hello, Alan. It's very nice to join the discussion today. I think the concept we're going to discuss today is a really interesting one, that doing more with less. I think it's a really challenging question for us. And, one of the things I would pose straight up is, but what is actually more? What does more equal? So is more about a better customer or staff experience, is more about producing more widgets or operational efficiency and thereby releasing resources back into the organisation to be reinvested? Or is it about uplifting quality, or is it about uplifting compliance potentially? So there's so many different ways we can look at what more actually is, and different organisations go about it in different ways. And I thought maybe just a quick example. I've worked in 2 organisations, and one did a digital enablement, and essentially they were striving for better customer outcomes by routing their ambulance officers based on geographic location. And the other one was really trying to address better recording of the delivery of care and therefore a compliance issue. But both were seeking more.
Yeah, it's that complexity and diversity that is really so interesting about this journey. Thanks, Nina. And Ron Hooton, our other guest. Ron joined Vision Australia as the Chief Executive in January 2013. He was recruited to lead the organisation in transforming from a charity to a for-purpose business. Since then, Ron has led Vision Australia through a remarkable period of change, achieving significant outcomes for the blind and low vision communities of Australia. With his strong financial management skills and extensive cross-industry background in the information and comms sector, Ron ensures he maintains his expertise and strong links to the ICT sector. So welcome, Ron.
Thanks, Alan. It's great to be here, and hi, everyone. Today, I'm going to bring a CEO's perspective to the digital conversation. One of the things that offers me a great advantage in my job is to have that IT background that allows the art of the possible, allows me to understand what can be done. There are some that say that the CIO that I have working in our team has got the best or worst job in the organisation. He doesn't need to convince me of anything. We're totally on the same page, but he also can't pull one over either. So it's just great to be here and participate in an ICT digital conversation as opposed to a CEO conversation that I'm normally involved in.
Cool. Thanks, Ron, and welcome. I want to take a couple of minutes now to introduce the digital value journey. Increasingly, perceptions of an organisation are defined for customers, consumers, and employees by the digital capabilities and interactions that people experience. Your organisation is judged by the ease of those interactions. COVID-19 has reminded us that we live in a volatile and uncertain world. Digital and IT leaders are really expected to understand these complexities and deliver flawless service every day from these often complex and sometimes fragile digital services. Add to this that digital consumes a significant proportion of an organisation's money and capabilities. So how does a digital leader develop the right capabilities? The purpose of the digital value journey is to help you and other leaders in your organisation identify the next steps you should be taking in developing your organisation. making the journey from being internally cost-focused to being externally and value-focused. This journey often starts with an organization really understanding and improving their cost management and performance to earn the trust of the organization's leaders and employees. Credibility is everything for the digital leader. As the journey continues, the digital team will develop a deep understanding of their organization's operations. That understanding often has to be, as good as the team using the services. And in the final stage, the digital team shifts its obsession to improving the customer and employee experience to achieve better outcomes. You need to think of this journey like an athlete competing at the Olympics. You can't decide one day that today I'm going to break the world record. You need to develop the muscle strength and the skills and the mental capability to operate at that level. And the digital value journey is the same. The digital leader, their team, and the wider organization all need to develop the capabilities to operate as a true digital organization. The journey is not over in a day, a week, or a year. And the whole organization needs to go on the journey. It is not the digital or IT team journey. The whole organization needs to be engaged, or your customers and employees will see the gaps. Think of the journey as a tour of an historic building seen through different eyes. An architect's going to look at the building the way it has been constructed and will appreciate the structure and how space is used. An artist will observe the colors, patterns, and emotions that the building evokes. Same tour, very different perspectives, and both will see different ways to improve the building. The digital value journey is the same. People will experience it differently as they bring different experience and skills to the journey. So Ron, Nina, of the things that really underlie this whole journey, the primary aspect is that it has to be people-centered. This is not about technology. It's about helping people achieve what they want to achieve faster with less friction. So Ron, how does this people-centered approach guide what you do?
Well, Alan, for us, we're a person-centered organisation. We're in human services. We provide services to people who are blind or have low vision to help them live a full life. I think the comment that you made earlier about this being about value more so than being about cost is a really, really important one. As an organisation, Vision Australia looks at three dimensions when we evaluate strategy, when we evaluate digital. The first is client service sustainability, the second workforce sustainability, the third is business sustainability. Yeah. All three of those have to be in sync for the organisation to work. A lot of organisations talk about if you make money, you're sustainable. For us, people have to love to deliver the services. Our clients have to love receiving the services in order for us to be financially sustainable. A couple of points that I'd like to make are that while a lot of digital journeys start with the client, I think that the workforce, the employees are a really, really important component as well today. We're entering over the next decade, for people that you want in your organisation, an employee-driven marketplace. People will be choosing which organisation they come to based on culture, but also I think digital maturity. That digital maturity means the types of systems they get to use every day, but also I think it means simplicity, and we'll come to that a little bit later. The other thing I'd just like to raise is that the motive for the system is really, really important. We're building a product at the moment called the Digital Heart. Now, the Digital Heart is a therapist-client interaction tool, but the motive is to get to children as young as 2 or 3 years of age in a digital sense and build a relationship with them that will last over 20 years. Because the services we're doing with them are to try and improve their employment prospects. So the motive for our system is a 2 decades long engagement of a client and their family to get a job done so that they have a great career at the end. A lot of organizations focus on the next quarter or how much change they can turn out in a particular amount of time. For me, it's how do you get something that has longitudinal value, real value over time.
That's That's a long planning horizon. Nina.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's such an interesting concept, isn't it? You know, we used to design systems around, you know, the best screens and the best integration of data. And, you know, from an IT perspective, you know, systems were great if they were efficient and, you know, the code worked well, the screens were efficiently designed and things, but we very rarely considered the actual human emotion in that. And I think these days that whole people-centered has come a lot more to light, and we have to really think about the type of emotions that people are actually experiencing as they're using our system. So we used to be all about perfection, and technologists love perfection, you know, the continuous improvement till you get to the end of the journey. And we have to realize that the end of the journey is never really there, because the systems have to adapt as businesses adapt, and you know, we have to consider all those things. So I think in organizations that I've worked in, the best organizations combine, you know, a really multifunctional team, and they bring those artists and architects like you spoke about to the table, and they really start to look at all those things. I personally like to, when I'm talking to people about different systems and things like that, I want to listen to the subtle, you know, what's the emotion, you know. I used to work in an aged care facility, and not an aged care facility, in residential aged care, doing, you know, systems for them. And that's not a time, realistically, in most families, that's not a time of joy when they're considering putting one of their loved ones into aged care. And that goes a lot to the emotion that they would be engaging with in using the systems and things. So I like to listen to, you know, what people are experiencing, what are the pain points, what are the moods, what are their gripes even, because that tells you, you know, what as people they want out of their systems and things.
I think, Nina, your comment about perfection is a really, really interesting one. I think as IT people, we have a view of perfection, and we like to execute that. One of the things I love doing is conceptually designing systems, and the digital heart I talked about before, the start of that was a diagram that I drew. But you've really got to be prepared to throw away that idea away as well, as smarter and more informed and connected people take the idea and improve it. I coined a phrase a few years ago: I don't want what I want what's right. And it's a really important message, I think, for anybody in a C-level position, is that you might have a view of the world, and it'll be close to being right, but you've got to allow other people to create the perfection, rather than try and deliver something that's perfection in your own mind.
And often you're getting a particular, let me call it, positioning of what's actually going on really in your organization. So, I mean, you've both had a widely varied career. So I was wondering how you get up to speed, how you understand what's really going on when you first start with a company. What's your experience, Nina?
Yeah, it can be really challenging to get in and get to understand an organization, just in any field, but particularly in IT. You know, I find one of the conversations that you can really get into quite early is what expectations do people actually have of the IT department, and what's their role within an organization? So if they're all talking about dollars and transactions and things like that, well, you know, you need to start forcing the conversation to a much higher level around the, you know, engagement in the maturity of the organization, engagement in the business strategy, and working out how IT can actually contribute to that, not in just transactional ways. So it's about understanding, you know, what the business is actually seeking to achieve. I like, you know, when I first get into an organization, I'll talk to a lot of people, but what I don't really want is just their opinions on what's going wrong, because that's already a filtered information source from my perspective. So what I really want to understand is, what are the symptoms? What are the pain points? What are the gripes? Then we can start to really get in behind things and understand what's actually going on before we start designing, you know, new services, new delivery of services, that sort of stuff. The other side of things, just from the more human side, is I actually like to find out who the influencers are in the organization. And this is a bit of a different approach from my point of view. I like to go and hang out in the meal room. And it's not because I like eating or I like a lot of coffees, but you get a real sense of the organization from what happens in the meal room or at the water cooler. So who's talking to who? Who are the real influencers and leaders in the organization? And 9 times out of 10, they won't be people on org charts that have, lines going up through them, sort of thing. And they're the people that I like to engage with, because I like to know what's really going on in the organization. I like to know what their feelings are. But that's also a resource that I can build for the future in terms of influencing when I've got a plan, when I've got a strategy, when I know what I want to do. They're the people I want to go and test it with, and I want to really soundboard it with those people. So it's all about the informal networks and how they work.
Yeah.
The last 2 roles that I've had have been as a CEO. So I've been conscious of not wanting to step on people's toes who are in CIO type roles. But in both organizations, I've gone in and bypassed all levels of management and gone straight to the front line. To talk to clients first, volunteers in our case, and also our staff. The information you get is completely unfiltered. It's raw, and it's really, really valuable, because if you're going to be person-centered in your digital journey, you've got to understand what people who are clients and people who are staff are really, really thinking out there. I think the other assessment I really like to make is, what is the digital capability of the organization? And when I talk about the organization, I'm talking about the whole ecosystem. So are clients digitally capable? Are staff digitally capable? Now, I know that these things sit on a spectrum, but the success of any digital system is ultimately the people who use it. A colleague of mine once said that if you've got a really great hi-fi system and terrible speakers, I know the analogy is a little bit old, you've still got terrible sound. And I liken that to digital systems, in the sense that you can have the purest and most beautiful digital system, but if people can't use it, you're no good. If people don't have digital access, I mean, I think about, Nina, your example around aged residential care. It's only now that people coming into aged residential care have any sense of digital capability at all, and most of it's smartphone delivered or maybe desktop delivered. But that's coming. So an assessment of systems into there have to really work for the end user. Probably the best system I've seen recently, Aussie Broadband. 4 pieces of information to sign up to broadband, 4 hours to get rid of Telstra, 4 hours of pain versus 5 minutes of joy. That's what we're aiming for, surely.
Yeah.
It is such a good point, that whole digital literacy, and I know many organizations at the moment are facing a real challenge around how they not only build those skills, but how they recruit those skills in as part of their talent pipelines.
And it's often very dependent on the nature of your workforce as well. I had the experience recently of, I was working in Sydney. This was obviously pre-COVID. It was a really hot day, 40 degrees, 8 o'clock in the morning. And I normally caught the train to where I was working, and not this day, it was too hot. Tried to get an Uber, nothing available. So I thought, I'll try the taxi app. So I downloaded it, launched it, taxi came, got in it, really nice guy, he was a retired Telstra technician of all things. And we got to the end of the journey, and he sort of said, now, how do I get paid? And he's obviously a retired guy and driving part-time, but they had given him no idea of how to actually use the app to get paid. And he gets on the RT and sort of says, hello. He just had no idea. So I ended up paying with my credit card and walking away. I had no idea how that ended up, but it was just this highly experienced guy hadn't been taught how to use the technology and really wasn't particularly interested in it. But that becomes the challenge, isn't it? I mean, once you've developed a view of an organization's capability, I mean, you've got the challenge of the day-to-day execution that consumes the largest share of resources. So Nina, how do you go about getting the best from those resources? That kind of concept around more for less.
Yeah, it's these are all great challenges, aren't they? You've from an IT perspective, I always say, if I'm coaching my leaders, I say, look, you don't get to have a strategic discussion at the boardroom table or with the executives until the bread and butter is working really well. And what I mean by that is if people can't provision a device, or they can't use their software, and they can't print things out, and the printers are falling over, and all the very nitty-gritty basic sort of things, then no one's interested in having that strategic discussion with you about, well, how can I enable your business area, or what are the business metrics that really count for you. So you need to get those things sorted out, and that in itself can be a real challenge sometimes. I've been in 24/7 organizations where even just doing a change or a release is really challenging to get that work done. Yeah. I think there's a lot of technologies out there at the moment that allow us to really look at continuous improvement in execution. So, on the back end systems and things like that, there's a lot of automation. There's a lot of things we can run robotically and things, so that obviously frees up resources, so makes us more operationally efficient and capable of doing things. But I think one of the most challenging things I've found in that space is actually having the conversation about what needs to stop, because everybody's doing a lot of stuff and everybody's doing things that they believe contribute, and a lot of the time you have that conversation about, well, why are we doing this, and somebody will sort of say, well, we've always done it that way, which is interesting. But I think there's a deeper conversation about what to stop. So what are the projects that we actually feel don't contribute to our corporate direction, or are not strategically aligned, or they were based on a vision from 3 years ago, but let's let go of that and actually have that discussion. So yeah, the discussion about what to stop, I think, is equally as important as doing everything more for less and doing it faster.
Yeah, I agree with your concept of getting the foundations right. When I arrived in our organization and the IT people finally talked to me, they said, well, what do you want? And I basically said to them, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, anywhere in the world there's an internet connection, I want to be able to use all of our systems. Please go away and make that so. And that's just a foundation of flexibility these days. But 8 years ago, it was something a bit radical for the not-for-profit sector. I think there's a need to keep, if we're going to make best use of resources, a need to keep people focused on the end result, and C-level executives have got an important role to be that anchor point of understanding that and conveying that simplicity is what we're after, person-centered is what we're after, longitudinal systems that have great life and length, that engage clients and instill loyalty, systems that work for our staff. And it'd be easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, mess of the project. I think the C-level executives, if they're going to get the best out of these systems, need to be a step back, playing a CEO-like role, and just insisting on getting the outcomes.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, because even if you can produce more widgets, or you can bump systems out a lot quicker than you could in the past, you're always coming back to that digital literacy and the ability of the organisation to actually embed the changes that are required. I've been in many organisations where the conversation is all centred on but can the IT department, or can you get projects delivered fast enough? And it's my comment is quite often about, it's not actually the delivery of the project that needs to be faster. It's actually sometimes you've got to take a more sustainable pace and really take time to generate digital literacy, and take time to embed the changes as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Just in embedding systems is really, really important. But also, as a CEO, and I might not be in a wide group here, I'm much more interested in a very, very good system being delivered when it's ready and when the organization's ready, than I am churning stuff out day after day after day, because that also creates chaos within the employee marketplace that we deal with. Constant change is not a great thing for organizations.
No, it isn't. And I think it's the thing that we're maybe finally, but I think it's something we've understood for a long time, but never practiced it sufficiently, is making sure that the organization's ready and capable to absorb. I think the ability of people to absorb change And particularly at a very high stress, externally driven stress time like COVID-19, trying to make change happen now is actually much harder. So, I mean, any change within an organization does require its people to change behaviors and attitudes. I mean, how has your approach, Ron, to engaging people changed over time?
Look, I think people are genuinely more digitally savvy these days. I mean, it enters the life of most people, so it's become easier. But I think the really, really important message I'd deliver there is that where we used to process, we used to say to people, this is how you use a system to get this particular outcome. What I've found is that that's got a low adoption rate, and you need to be talking to people about how does this digital system fit in the overall ecosystem? How does it fit within our client services strategy? How is it going to make your life easier? This is how it fits together in the architecture of the organization, as opposed to this is how you do a screen. Because if you look at all of the systems that consumers use, pretty much all these systems don't have an instruction manual like we used to have saying, allow that. You know, we have the expectation that consumers come in and fill in the forms because they've done it the same in other organizations. For our staff, then, we still create these complex internal processes and try to teach them how to use Salesforce screens and how to skip between this, that, and the other thing. And we massively overcomplicate it. So I think the simplicity message comes back as, again, but also let's teach them about the architecture of the organization and how it's going to fit together, because that's the missing link for smart people, I think, in organizations.
Yeah, and I think it's time to look at multidisciplinary teams as well. Gone are the days where it was a more engineering sort of process and stuff like that. So I think I've heard of organisations using anthropologists in their teams to come up with solutions and things like that. And really the way I've sort of approached things is to look at setting your teams up for success. So pushing them in the right direction, but also then working on removing roadblocks. So coaching them on, roadblocks that might be mindsets and assumptions and things like that, but then physically removing the roadblocks to actually give them a really good high speed run at doing things.
Yeah, I find it really interesting, the kind of the role Simon Sinek has been taken as a thought leader and promoting that concept of why, given, because he does have that anthropological background.
Yeah, interesting.
So just a reminder for people, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A chat session. We're going to be moving into Q&A in a few minutes. So just coming back to the focus of our session here to close our discussion. Nina, how do you actually do more with less? Well, what does that actually mean to you?
Yeah, look, I think, like I said before, I think one of the best conversations you can have is actually about what to stop. Free people up, focus people on what's right, what's aligned, and like I said, remove roadblocks. If you encapsulate the power of the people, everybody wants to do a great job. They want to work on cool and funky, systems and digital hearts and all sorts of things like that. Give them the tools they need and essentially get out of the way.
Yeah.
I think get out of the way is great advice. My advice into C-level people around this is always be looking for the value rather than the mechanics, the output. As a CEO, I don't really care that much how much work goes into a system if it delivers long-term value out the back end, because the payback will just go on for years and years and years and years and years. And if it means extra clients, if it means extra engagement and extra revenue, that's incredibly good. Particularly if it means that the next time I go to an office and I sit down with a client and a staff member, I can see that system being used in the way it was intended, the clients getting value out of it, the staff members getting value out of it. I'd rather have that than a fast, ugly delivery. I mean, we used to think about, and I got caught by this in our big Salesforce implementation. There was a large component of the system that on the basis of you can have either scope, quality, or price. the team decided to reduce scope. And I didn't want to reduce scope. I wasn't set for an August 2015 must-be deliver date. I was more interested in understanding what the supply side was going to do in terms of Salesforce. So I think keeping a very, very tight rein on the decisions people are making around the quality of the system that's being delivered is a really, really important thing as well. So we've got to get the business outcome before we've got to get efficiency.
So you talked a bit about sort of large project there. I mean, a lot of the shift or the delivery of the way people do transformation tends to now be more iterative. Is that something that you're both seeing coming through?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one of the healthcare organizations I worked in, there would be a whole swag of, junior up and coming surgeons, doctors and things like that. And they would be regularly, downloading an app, trying this out, trying that out, combining two apps together to try and, come up with a bit of a solution. Now, in the early days, I remember IT going, this cannot happen. They have to come through us and they have to get approved software and blah, 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 blah. But I guess over time, what you learn is they're actually the best innovators in the business. They're out there, they know they've got a problem. They go out, they do all the research for you. They find things, they filter things to you. And, I think essentially that's one of the keys is let the business areas do the innovation, put some frame around it in terms of, obviously in the healthcare, you can't have patient information sitting on apps all over the place and things like that. But the more you explain the principles about those things, and then again, get out of the way and let people do their innovation, the more you have coming to your front door.
So Ron, what's your experience?
Oh, look, I absolutely agree with those comments. The iterative development we have today, I find interesting because people keep talking to me about minimum viable product, and no one actually talks to me about actually delivering the full thing. And it seems to me that organizations that leap from minimum viable product to minimum viable product to minimum viable product have kind of this sort of organizational ADHD, where if that's not a little bit non-PC, that we've actually got to get in and deliver something that fully works as well. And you look at organizations like, I don't know, you talk about Uber or Clubhouse or something like that. They all started off with minimum viable products, but actually they've invested in making them fully capable. And I have this real fear that leaderships of organizations will want to jump from the new to the new to the new. So I think keeping really focused on actually delivering the needs of the organization.
Although that's sort of, I'm not saying that it's a scattergun approach, but that sort of scattergun approach in a way sort of works. Like I read today that Amazon's going to go into hair cutting, and I went, interesting.
Oh, no.
Yeah, like how are they going to commoditize that?
Yep.
For
human services.
You look at Amazon though. I mean, a lot of organizations think that they can build an Amazon overnight. Those guys have invested billions in building that platform. I mean, inconceivable amounts of money. And the things that they do, I mean, them building a minimum viable product for hair cutting is probably going to cost them $100 million or something like that. I mean,
it's a lot of haircuts.
It's a lot of haircuts.
A lot of haircuts.
I'm really intrigued, Ron, by you that need to focus on kind of the long-term strategic value. I love your example earlier of your longitudinal development of your people. That I'm going to quote from an oldie but a goodie book, From Good to Great by Jim Collins. He talks about the flywheel effect there.
Yep.
So that your development of an organization is not a big transformational change. It's about a lot of little steps moving in the same direction, increasing the momentum of the flywheel. Just increases that organization's capability and success. So let's open up the discussion to questions now. I mean, we've got I'm going to start with one we've actually started to talk about. I mean, you've both had health sector experience. Where do you see health tech going in the future?
Oh, yeah. If only we could predict some of that stuff, hey?
Especially in New Zealand at the moment.
Yeah. Well, who would have thought hand sanitizer would be going through the roof at this point in time? But anyway, yeah, look, I saw some cool tech when I was, well, not really tech, but, more what they call augmented diagnosis tools when I was in India a couple of years ago. And essentially, they've got a huge population, and, healthcare can be very, very patchy for a lot of Indian people. And what they were doing was they were using machine-guided sight to look at mammograms and essentially go through many, many mammograms in a short period of time, picking out anomalies and things like that. But the cool thing about it was they were then balancing out the human and the machine components of the diagnosis by taking those that the machine basically said, oh, this needs to be looked at, and then feeding that to a human. And that way, we're getting the best skills out of the humans at a point in the supply chain where they can deliver the best care. But we're also, speeding up, and we're making sure that those people in need actually get, the time of these sort of human diagnosticians.
Yeah, I think that the human side is going to be incredibly important, and I see greatly more enabled, empowered patients, to use the healthcare terminology, in two areas. The first area is in, the Apple Watch that most of us have got on our wrist is already a mine of information. So I know what my resting heart rate is, what my VO2 max is, God knows what. I've got a blood pressure monitor that tells me if my heart rhythm's out of sync, and you can get an EEG off the Apple Watch as well. This, as the sensor capability develops to being equivalent to the current clinical capability of specialist tools, I think that the mine of information that's going to be created there for self-interpretation and for specialist interpretation is very, very strong. So I see a lot of enablement for individuals there. The other area that I see is that augmented reality, and I think it comes in the area of informed consent for clients and client information. So a few years ago, we built an augmented reality tool that allows a person to put a headset on and experience what it's like to be blind. What it's like to have low vision. So glaucoma, cataracts, macular degeneration, and so forth. Incredibly popular tool for showing children what their parents are going through with their age-related blindness.
Wow.
You could imagine a person being able to virtual reality do their own laparoscopic cholecystectomy online before the doctor does it to them, so that they could see exactly what was going on. You could have explanations about how things work with really complicated diagrams, with people being able to see in 3D a prostate or a heart or something like that. I think there's just enormous potential in that.
Don't know that I want to see some of the ins and outs of my operation.
I was just thinking exactly the same thing. The other one that really intrigues the other one that really intrigues me is, the health system is about longevity of life and quality of life, and getting the two in balance. And I think the ability for health tech to support assisted living, so that an elderly person actually is able to live in their own home for a longer period of time and have the right care paths available to them when they need them. And I think sort of with our aging population in so many of the developed countries, I think that the way health tech can provide it in watches, and I think the Apple Watch has, when you fall over, that has an ability to actually provide an alert now.
Yeah.
And so obviously for someone living on their own, it's an incredible safety net to actually have, provided the health system behind actually supports it effectively.
Yeah, and they've done, I was just going to say, they've done some really good work around robots and, like the Siri type things, where they listen to the voice in the home of, elderly people that are living by themselves, and monitor loneliness as well, which is really cool.
And I think these are all now consumer grade, consumer cost technologies.
Yeah.
Sort of 10 years ago, they were so much They are, there's so much, we were having to use specialist technology. And now there's so much relatively low-cost home automation available. It's so much easier to extend those care paths actually into the home effectively. So I've got one more quick question, if we can. And Ron, directing this at you first. How do you go about thinking about that digital value journey and thinking about in a social venture? How do you do value measurement in a social venture? It's not as easy as your profit and loss.
So we do still have an income is greater than costs measure, but that's not the be all and end of all, as it is for many shareholder-based organisations. We haven't gone down the social return on investment route too far. So it's very much about the outcomes and the capability that we leave our clients with. So we have a concept within our organisation that all of our services are based around education, employment, independence and social inclusion. And what that does is that says that if a person gets a great education, they get a job and they'll be independent and socially included. We have mechanisms that measure across those dimensions. And the digital journey is all completely part of that. If I go back to the digital heart, we're going to be able to monitor the progress of children through a prescribed journey towards their employment, including gamified quizzes and also qualifications. I mean, the idea is that when they get to 16 or 17, they've got a LinkedIn profile like capability that will demonstrate to employers what a fantastic person they are, despite their blindness or low vision.
So everyone, thank you for your questions today. We hope you found it thought-provoking. And Ron, Nina, thank you particularly for both of your time today. You both bring such interesting insights to a discussion. We're going to send all attendees an email follow-up tomorrow. Please complete the survey that we'll include in this so we can learn and improve as we go. And the recording of the session will be available next week on the Ecosystem site. We'll also share an exec summary of the session via email. Today was the first of 8 episodes introducing the digital value journey. Our next episode is going to be on the 25th of May, and we're going to be looking at why execution is the critical capability. So please continue to engage with us in the next phase of this journey as we look deeper into the model. So Ron, Nina, again, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it. And,
pleasure to be here.
Pleasure. Hope you got something out of it, everybody.
To all of you attending, thank you very much for your time today. I understand how pressured life is at the moment. Thanks very much.